Great, we just went over this. We'll go through this again quickly, and the reason we're just going to put these on here is because it's going to apply to the ones down at the bottom. So we had talked about in a parallelogram that the diagonals bisect, that opposite sides are parallel, opposite sides congruent, opposite angles congruent, and that consecutive angles supplementary. Okay? All right. So as we work through, okay, we're going to talk today about these three new ones: a rhombus, a rectangle, and a square. All right, so what makes a rhombus a rhombus? Anybody know? Okay, well, in a rhombus, you have four congruent sides. Okay, now the definition for a rhombus is we are going to say that it is a parallelogram with four congruent sides. Now the reason why we write it that way is by saying that it's a parallelogram, we now can say that it has all five properties above. So in a rhombus, opposite sides are congruent, opposite sides are parallel, opposite angles are congruent, supplementary angles for the consecutive angles, diagonals bisect each other. All those are properties apply to a rhombus. The additional properties are, number one, that all four sides are congruent. Does anybody have anything else for a rhombus? Yeah. So what can we add to it? Something that makes it different. Okay, well, one of them is that the diagonals are going to be perpendicular. So the diagonals are perpendicular. Number two, the diagonals bisect the angles. Okay, so what that means is, in this picture above, this angle is congruent to this angle. This angle is also congruent to this angle. So these four angles are now congruent to each other. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then, thank you. These four angles. So this angle is congruent to this angle, which is congruent to this angle, which is congruent to this angle. So all of those angles are congruent to each other. Questions there? All right, middle one, rectangle. What makes a rectangle a rectangle? What can we apply to that one? If you were to describe to your younger brother or sister what a rectangle was, maybe they're in kindergarten and they're working on shapes. Opposite sides are congruent in a parallelogram. So what makes a parallelogram turn into a rectangle is basically the question. All the angles are 90 degrees. So we got a right angle, a right angle, a right angle, and a right angle. So what we say is, similar to rhombus, is that a rectangle is a parallelogram. So it has all five properties of a parallelogram with four right angles. Now I believe the true definition is that it's a parallelogram with four congruent angles, but all four of those congruent angles are going to end up being right angles, so we'll just say it's a parallelogram with four right angles. Okay, so they're all 90 degrees. Okay? Additional ones. The big one is that the diagonals end up being congruent. So the diagonals are congruent. So since the diagonals also bisect each other, you're going to sometimes see tick, 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 okay? That all four of those individual pieces end up being the same. All right? Square. What makes a square a square? How does a parallelogram turn into a square? Yep. Has 90-degree angles. Okay, so we'll add those in. Michaela? And all sides are equal. So would it be fair to say that a square is equilateral and equiangular? Yeah. Okay, so it's a quadrilateral that is equilateral and equiangular. Or what we are going to say, it is a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. Okay? And so in our quad tree, it's below rhombus and it's below a rectangle because of all the properties of a rhombus. So I'm going to circle all of these. These apply over here, and this one applies over here. Okay, if you want to rewrite them, you can rewrite them. So what that means is that the diagonals are going to be congruent in a square. So tick, tick, and I should do double ticks. Okay, and then they are also going to be perpendicular. Okay, just like they were for a rhombus and a rectangle. And then the diagonals are also going to bisect the angle. So what that means is, okay, when I draw a diagonal in, I end up getting the following. This is a side of the square, this is the side of the square, this is the right angle formed by the square. Tick, tick. What type of triangle do I get specifically? Okay, as in give me numbers. How about it's a, very good, 45, 45, 90-degree triangle, okay? Which means if this side length was 7 and this side length was 7, can anybody give me the length of the diagonal? Not 14. Very good, 7 root 2. Remember how we talked about how it's x, x, x root 2. So 7, 7, 7 root 2, okay? So everything that we learned in the last chapter may come back at some point. Okay? Questions? All right, so go on to, so first thing that we got to do is we have to, based upon the information given, is identify what type of figure it is. So your options. You could say, hey, it's just a 4-sided figure. You could say it's quadrilateral. You could say it's a parallelogram. Okay? You could say more specifically it's a rectangle, a square, or a rhombus. So, A. We got 1 vote for rhombus. Claudia, what do you think? Rhombus? Andrew, what do you think? Rhombus? Over here? Paige? Rhombus. Rhombus is correct. The reason why it's a rhombus is because you have 4 rhombus. Okay? So it's a rhombus. All right? B. Rectangle. Anybody else? Tyler, what do you think? Rectangle, Adrian? All right, it is a rectangle. Okay? C. What do you got? Rectangle? Rhombus? Anybody else? Parallelogram? What do you think, Tommy? Rhombus? All right, so some people said rhombus, some people said rectangle. So first of all, in a rhombus, all 4 sides are congruent. Are all 4 sides the same number? Rhombus is out. Some people said rectangle. Rectangles, we said, have 90-degree angles. Are all the angles 90 degrees? So rectangle's out. Okay? So if rhombus and rectangle are out, square is out. So now we're down to either quadrilateral or parallelogram. It's a parallelogram. Okay? Opposite sides are congruent. Opposite angles are congruent. Okay? They're even, consecutive angles are supplementary. Okay? All right, the second part, A. Okay, first thing we gotta do is identify what the figure is, and then we gotta solve for x and y. So, what's the figure? Rhombus, I heard? Rhombus? Sergey? Rhombus. All four sides are congruent, so it's a rhombus. All right, how do we solve for x? Okay. 180 minus 104, because remember, since a rhombus is a parallelogram, your consecutive angles are supplementary, so therefore x is going to equal 76. Okay? What about y? Hint, 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 tick, tick. Zoe? Set them equal to each other. So y plus 8 equals 3y. What does y equal? 4. Okay? B. What shape is it? I heard square. Doesn't tell us anything about the sides, though. Is it a square? Rectangle? Anybody else? Square? So you said square, and now she's backing you up square. Why square? Okay, which could mean it's a rectangle. So why is it a square? In a square, are the diagonals perpendicular? All right, is that true for a rectangle? No, so it is a square. You were right. Okay? All right, so then, since it's a square, we need a way to solve for x and a way to solve for y. Ideas. Paige, any ideas? Either one, x or y. Okay, she says 5x equals 3x plus 18, because alternate interior angles, thank you. Okay, alternate interior angles are congruent. Okay, we could have also, FYI, done 5x equals 45, because remember how we said a square, when the diagonals are cut in a square, you'll always get 45, 45, 90-degree angles. Okay, either way, your x value is going to work. What does x equal? 9. Okay, solving for y. Any ideas? Solving for y? I heard a 2y equals 10, because since the diagonals are bisected, the two pieces are equal to each other, so y is equal to 5. All right, C. What shape is it? Michaela? Parallelogram. Anybody else? Okay, now technically what we should probably do is, because we never go based upon a picture, is solve for x first, see if the x value makes these angles 90 degrees, because if it does, what would you change your answer to? Rectangle. So why don't we check with the x values first. So if I do 4x plus 7 equal to 5x minus 6, because the opposite angles are congruent in a parallelogram, what does x equal? X is equal to 13. All right, so now I'm just going to plug it back in. What's 4 times 13 plus 7? Or is it 90 degrees? 4 times 13, 52, plus 7, 59. Is that a 90-degree angle? Nope. So she was correct. It is a parallelogram. Okay, but we should have, we just had to check just in case. All right, solving for y. Okay, she says that y plus 3 equals 2y plus 1. The tick-tick gives it away. The opposite sides are congruent to each other. Y is equal to 2. All right, any questions?